Good day! This is Teacher Rowan. I'll be your guide in exploring Google Apps for education, for teaching and learning. In Google for Education, teachers can connect and collaborate easily while staying on task. It gives teachers the freedom to spend more time personalizing the learning experience and less time managing it. Students can learn essential skills such as 21st century problem solving, which they can use it in their future careers. As such, the accessibility features will also help and assist every learner to do their best work. Google offers different useful applications that we can use to connect education to technology. This will help our teachers as a 21st century educators to innovate and find ways on how to make teaching and learning more exciting, engaging, effective, and flexible to the demands of the society. Let's re-explore the education experience by discovering new angles to create, collaborate, and communicate as one. Para sa bata, para sa bayan, at para sa guro. Ang pagkatuto huwag gawing komplikado. Sulong edukalidad.
Magandang araw, Sir Wilbur po, at your service. Narito ang ETUlay upang gabayan ka sa inyong pag-aaral upang lubos na maunawaan ang iba't ibang paksa o subject. Ang ETUlay ay isang free online tutorial class na pinangungunahan ng ICT's Educational Technology Unit sa pamumuno ni Undersecretary Elaine Del P. Pascua. Ang programang ito ay hindi lamang para sa mga bata, kundi ito rin ay magsisilbing gabay sa mga magulang at mga guro kung paano nila ituturo o gagabayan sa bawat asignatura ang kanilang mga anak o mga estudyante. Sa kasalukuyan, ang self-learning module mula sa rehiyon ng Calabarzon at kilala sa tawag na Pivot ang ginagamit sa ating ETUlay online class. Kaya ano pang hinihintay ninyo? Ihanda na ang inyong mga ballpen o lapis, papel o kwaderno at samahan kaming itulay ang pagkatuto para sa bawat batang Pilipino. Sama-sama tayong magtutulungan para malampasan ang mga hamon sa panahong ito. Halina't matuto kasama ang inyong online tutor sa oras na ito.
Hi learners, ETUlay Tuesday is Choose English Day. I am Tutor Jamie and I will be guiding and sharing insights on creative nonfiction. Let us now turn the wheels of our creative minds as we gear up our imagination in telling our stories by writing literary pieces in our most creative way. We are on week 2 of our 4th quarter in creative nonfiction. Last week, we were introduced to critic with a Q, a type of literary technique which critically describes, analyzes, summarizes, and evaluates the strengths and weaknesses of a piece of artwork. May it be a literary piece, a painting, a sculpture, a film, performing arts, and even food. We clarified the difference between critique and criticism, wherein a critique is objective, descriptive, and balanced, while criticism is more judgmental and biased. We also found out that critique would provide artists room for improvement by establishing the strengths of his or her work and improving on the weaknesses evaluated. For this afternoon session, still under reading and critiquing nonfiction, we will be writing a mini critic. So let me show you my slide for the objective. Ayan. So we will write a mini critic of a peer's work based on coherence and of organization of paragraphs, development of literary elements, use of factual information, and other qualities concerning form and content. Ayan. So, by the way po, shout out to all the faculty and students of both junior and senior high school of Caloocan City Business High School, headed by our OIC principal, Dr. Ivy Perez. Also, To Ma'am Angelica Joyce de los Santos, Teacher 3 of CCBHS Senior High School, for letting me use the resources I have for today. Ayan. Marami pong salamat. So we go to our lesson. So before we let the ball rolling, I would like to ask you to um, impart on a short quiz, on a review quiz of what we had last week. So all you have to do is to comment your answers, comment down your answers, either A, B, C, or D on the comment section. Ayan. So let's start. So first question is, what is a critique? So we have choices. Letter A, it critically describes, summarizes, analyzes, and evaluates the strengths and weaknesses of a wide variety of things and piece of literary work. B, it is an essay that is clear, concise, focused, structured, and backed up by evidence. C, it is a summary of the article that reflects the interests, experience, and expertise of the writer. D, it is used to claim a one-sided position on a specific issue. Yeah. So what is our answer for this question? Our answer would be letter A. Ayan. So our answer is letter A. So critic, kanina I already mentioned this during my opening spiel, that the critically describes, summarizes, analyzes, and evaluates the strengths and weaknesses of of a wide variety of things and pieces of literary work. So whatever it is, what kind of artwork it is, maybe if it's a sculpture, painting, performing arts, no, yung mga drama, and all others, as long as it's with it has to do with art, no, then it can be critically be it can be go under critic. Yeah. Next question. Which of ay Bilugan na yung answer. Which of the following best describes criticism? Yan, kung mabilis ang inyong mga mata, nakita nyo na yung answer. So let's have letter A. It is balanced and descriptive. B, it is honest and constructive. C, it is fault-finding and judgmental. Or D, it is straightforward and polite. So what could be the answer? Okay. So our answer here, the best one that describes criticism would be letter C. Ayan. It is fault-finding and judgmental. Ayan. So that is what makes criticism different from a critic. Next, which of the following states how a critic benefits the writer? Letter A, critic helps the writer make his or her work better. B, critic encourages the writer to pursue a different path. C, critic gives the writer concrete ideas for succeeding works. Or D, critic summarizes the writer's work. So which of the following states how a critic benefits the writer? Ayan. So we have learned last time that a critic actually can make or unmake, do or undo, no, and also would give like an authentication to a certain literary piece or a certain art. Ayan. So our answer here would be, ayan, from sabi ni Sir John Ed Frias, letter A daw, makes the writer or helps the writer make his or her work. Let's see if it's A. And yes, it is A. Ayan. Thank you po. Ayan. Next. Meron pa ba ako? I think meron pa ako. Wala na. Okay. So, let's go over. Thank you po sa mga nag-participate on our short. Sabi ko sa inyo, very short lang yung review quiz na yun. Now, let us partake again on the difference between critic and criticism. No? So, let's not forget this too. Kasi most of the time, na pagbabaliktad natin to or nagiging parang nai-interchange, which we should not do because we are not giving justification to critic or to criticism. Ayan. So again, we mentioned last week that critique and criticism are both forms of feedback. But then what makes critique different from criticism is that, as bulleted there, a detailed analysis with conclusions based on evidence and inference. Again, the conclusions that we get and we use in critique are all based on evidences and standards or approaches that we use to critique or to analyze a certain literary piece for this matter kasi we are on non-fiction. And also, since the conclusions are based on evidence, it's most likely that critique is descriptive and balanced. Kasi nga may ebidensya siya. Meron siyang fino-form na justification. Not really justification of his own or her own opinion, but based on certain aspects and standards. While criticism, as we mentioned, is an expression of mere disapproval or fault finding or judgmental. This one is more of subjective kasi if you really do not like what you see, then you go ahead and give out what you dislike about it. Instead of giving, of course, we all have something to be disliked with a particular piece. However, with critic kasi, uh, of course we all believe that there is always good in all things, no? Sabi nga ni Miss Universe sa 2018, Catriona, uh, sabi niya, silver lining, always look at the good in people, look at the silver lining po. Yan. Okay. So we should not forget that. Now we go on and we try to write a mini critic. The mini critic is just put there as a form for us to write, not really a formal or a professional critique, but something that we can do or we can start with, no? Especially if our learners, no, are really vying or really trying to be a good writer or a good critic. So eventually they would have something to look back. Kung sakaling maging magaling na critic na kayo, magaling na writers na, you have something to look back and remember that you started with a mini critic. Ayan. So in a mini critic, we have to remember na a critic can actually help a writer improve his or her work. We always have to remember that. That's why our critique has to be as objective as possible, as descriptive, and uh, evidence-based as possible. Kasi nga, we would not want to really put the writer down. We just want him or her to improve on something that he has or she has to improve. So there's an art to providing well-constructed and thoughtful criticism that helps a writer improve the work that recognizes the differences between personal preference and the objective of quality of work. Because when we only say the preference lang natin, that would fall under criticism na kasi personal preference. But then with critic kasi, halo, you also have your preference. However, you have to be fair kasi syempre naghirap din, nag-effort din si writer. Of course, there will be something that would be positive about his or her work. Ayan. So the process of critiquing other writers' work thoughtfully, intelligently, see there, thoughtfully but intelligently will strengthen one's own writing. It will really help, no? Critiquing one's work involves the following aspects. So we have to consider the following aspects when we are doing a mini critique. The first one is we have to consider if the artwork or the literary piece, dahil we're doing nonfiction, has coherence and organization of paragraphs. So titignan natin. Pag nakita natin yung gawa ng ating kasama, ng ating colleague, ng ating classmate, we have to check the coherence and the organization of paragraphs. Okay, so here with the coherence and the organization of paragraphs, we should always remember that paragraphs should not only be well developed and unified but also coherent. What do we mean by that? Pag sinabi kasi natin coherent or when we talk about coherence, we mean something that is unified, something that all the thoughts, the ideas in statements put together in a paragraph are all about a single topic or a single or kung hindi man single topic, however we may put it into something like nagko-cohere siya or parang nadidikit-dikit siya, maganda yung flow, no? Hindi siya parang if we have one topic, hindi siya lumalabas doon, which may cause confusion among the readers. Lagi confusion among the readers, no? And that's what we always as writers, no? That's what we always want to avoid, to confuse our readers. Kasi if we confuse our readers, then how would we expect them to read more of our works? Di po ba? Ayan. Meron tayong mga messages dito. Ayan. Hello po sa ating po mga kasama. Ayan, John Ed Frias, Agbini Joshua, Jamie De Vera Bornolia. Ayan, thank you po for joining. Ayan, so when we say coherence, again, we mean that the ideas in a single paragraph has to be unified, has to jive into one topic lang. So dapat yung topic sentence, yung iyong mga justifications are all into one idea only. And then also the organization of the paragraphs, yung tuloy-tuloy, yung what you call this, the smooth flowing of the idea in your paragraph. Okay, so we have to remember that each paragraph has to have its main points, main topic, so that it could meet coherence and organization. Ayan. Okay, next we have something to consider in a Minicritic, no? So development of literary elements. So we already know what literary elements are. In this case, we have to look for the originality. So originality, I have some questions here that might help our learners into knowing or trying to uh, analyze the originality of the work or the story. So the first one is, how original is the story? Especially if our learners or we ourselves, no teachers, especially if we are wide readers, or pwede rin na mahilig tayong manood ng movies, classical movies, or any genre of movies. Sometimes we also find some genres or some pieces that we feel we have read somewhere before, no? So if this is important kasi um talking about nonfiction, we always have to deal with credibility of the information that we are writing about, no? So if you find that something is parang pareho ito nung nakaraan, or pareho ito nung nabasa ko na, or ganitong ganito yung napanood ko, so we have to check the originality, or we have to see, or siguro if the one that you're critiquing is a friend, you might want to ask, nabasa mo ba yung this novel, like this is what happened, yon. So if he or she confides, then go ahead, and then you can help him or her with trying to make his or her story as original as possible. There is the story cliche, or does it have at least a couple of ideas that you haven't encountered before? Baka naman bagong-bago. Parang ang sarap magbasa something of non-fiction. Lalo non-fiction, that's very challenging. Kasi pag fiction, katang-isip lang. So parang, for me, parang mas madali siyang gawin. No? Especially if you're really an imaginative person. But with non-fiction kasi, you tend to write you tend to really write on something that has happened, something that is truthful, and you tend to be careful with the credibility of the facts and the information that you put in. So you really have to be careful. And parang ang hirap, especially if you're telling something true, 'di ba parang ang hirap magtagni-tagni pag hindi original or pag hindi anong tawag niyan, parang pag inimbento mo lang, 'di ba? So there. So originality is really big with creative nonfiction. Ayan. Next, in development of literary elements would be the setting. So we also have to look at the setting. Was the setting poorly or well developed? No? Hindi ka ba nalito sa kung nasaan or ano yung description of the place? Kasi pag nalito ka, baka medyo kailangan mo, you need to help the writer or your friend na kinikritik mo yung gawa na, hey, something is, parang you need to improve on this one, no? Ng setting. Okay? I remember in postgraduate po kasi nagpo-postgraduate ako, nagma-masters. We have this assignment na we have to work on our what do you call this, drama script. Yan, gagawa kami ng drama script. Not really bonggang drama script, but something that we have to work on. And then ang hirap gumawa ng setting, no, in a drama script. So ang hirap gumawa ng setting pag hindi mo siya in-internalize. So I have my son, my youngest son is has autism. So paligid-ligid siya sa akin pag hinihiram niya na tong laptop. And then I was fidgeting, yung parang pinoporma ko yung sarili ko to make descriptions na she held her, she got the table on the right side. Parang ganun, iniisip ko yung itsura. So pag gilid-gilid ako, pa fidget. Sabi nung anak ko, Mommy, what are you doing? Sabi niya gano'n. Tapos, I'm imagining. Ganyan. So, yun, nangiti na lang siya. So, sometimes we have, as a writer, sometimes we have to go through those silly actions, no, just to get the right setting. So if we have to do those just to make the right setting, the proper setting, then we should do, no, we should work on it. Another question under this one is, ayan, were you confused as to where and when the tale took place in one or more scenes? Sometimes there are stories that we read na parang saan ba talaga nangyari? Sa dagat ba? Sa desierto or where? Parang we have this confusion, no? Kasi if we are establishing a setting, we have to use words that really describes that setting. For example, if it's a clear morning, no, a clear morning, ano ba ang setting, ano ba itsura ng langit pag clear morning, or like 8 o'clock in the morning, or like if you are uh, in a farm, so what should be heard, what should be seen in a farm. So you have to put that all in a setting, and the critic has to see that in your setting. Next, did the author involve all of the senses in describing his or her setting? At the same time, did the author transport you into his or her story? So, yan yung sinasabi ko kanina, that you have to internalize the setting for you to establish it. Kasi kung parang nakaupo ka lang, ewan ko, if that works for other writers, then kudos to them, no? Pero ako kasi parang minsan kailangan ko pang tumayo, tas lumakad. How do I imagine? How do I put in description walking, tiptoed, or ano? So I have to internalize it para masulat ko siya. Ayun. In that way, if you as a writer would be able to put yourself in a different world and describe that, then and you do it in a very good and in a successful way, then most probably your readers too will be transported to the world that you are trying to establish. And so would the critic would see that and would give you like a thumbs up for that. Okay. Next, another is characterization under development of literary elements. How well drawn are the characters in the story? Is the personality of the character established in the story or in the narrative, or kailangan pa ng push, no? Also, did the characters convince you that they grew up in the world or setting where the writer placed them in? Did you feel that you are that character? Especially kapag nakarelate ka dun sa characterization niya. If the characterization is like a single mother who uh raises her three kids with ano, so if you can relate to that, then then the writer is has successfully established his or her character. Another is, do the characters have friends, enemies, acquaintances, secrets, desires, and fears? Can you find it there? Hindi naman kailangan dun sa write-up na sabihin na uh, Vilma is afraid of spiders. Instead of just saying that, the writer has to come up with a description that will not proactively say that Vilma is afraid of spiders, but instead make the reader think na and conclude na she is afraid of spiders. So something like that. Another is, do they have physical body with a physical history? No? And then, do you feel as if you know him or her intimately by the end of the story? So super nakarelate ka ba with that characterization? Yan. So if a critic finds that if the work is like a narrative like that, so a critic has to find those aspects of characterization. Another is conflict and plot. Bakit may conflict and plot tayo, Tutor Jamie? Kasi nga po, we are working on creative nonfiction. And with creative nonfiction or with nonfiction, we are narrating events like a story, no? In a way that we write stories. Yan. Kaya may conflict and plot. How interesting are the conflicts? Ayan na, napapaganon ba yung when you critique it, do you have that effect, or does the story have that effect on you? If yes, then that thing is good. Pag wala, baka pwedeng mag-suggest ka as a critic on what the writer should do to add more juice to the conflict or interest to the conflict. Is the conflict or the plot inventive, exciting, and compelling? If you feel na parang kulang pa, then you go ahead and give your friend or the writer a push or like an idea or help, di ba? Another is emotional, the emotional or intellectual effect. So hindi lang tayo puro emotion lang when we are writing creative nonfiction. No, of course there are a lot of uh, moments wherein we can sympathize or empathize with the character. However, there should also be intellectual effect. Ano ba? What's the logic behind these stories? Parang ganon. How well did the story arouse powerful emotions among the readers? So same thing like with the conflict or how interesting it is. And then if it did arouse powerful emotions, were they proper emotions for the intended audience? No? Is the intended audience if you're working on a narrative or on biography of a single mother, if it aroused powerful emotions, is it fit to the audience? Ano ba audience mo? Baka masyado namang bata yung audience mo. Baka hindi nila masyado magets yung emotion that you're trying uh, to deliver. So you have to also ask that to the writer as a critic. Next is the theme. How well did this story speak to the readers? No, is the theme perfect or works with the idea of the creative nonfiction, of the nonfiction that you're writing with with what you're narrating? Sakto ba siya? O baka pwedeng ibang theme ang mas okay doon, ang mas magfi-fit doon. Does it raise interesting questions about life and provide profound insights? This is really um, parang gusto ko rin siyang ipasok dun sa intellectual kanina, dun sa emotional and intellectual aspect. Kasi I believe that a literary piece really has an effect to a certain person. It can actually change a person's perspective, especially if it is artistically and intellectually created. Pero kung hindi naman, uh, I think we should work on that. No? Ayan. And then we also have, under a mini critic, we also have form and content. So, kasi nga, bakit may fact bigla dyan? Of course, kasi creative nonfiction po. Okay, so these are the questions that we would have. Form and content may form and content tayo sa fiction, pero more on artistically done. I mean, more on the fiction side. So, hindi siya syempre based on fact. It may be inspired by a fact, but not entirely based on fact. Okay. Is the story based on real experiences or was it just made up? So that is a question under form and content, no? Na pag fact yung hinahanap ng critic on that particular literary piece. So next would be extensive research. So of course, if it's a fact, then how would you know that it's a fact? Of course, you would have to have justification. Where do you get those justifications and reasons? You would be able to see if the writer has researched or did an extensive research. Is the writing based on research or real life experiences? Did the writer conduct an interview about the characters, events, and setting? Yung especially when we are reading a biography, no, we are telling the story of another person or the life story of another person. Minsan nga parang it's really parang idol ang tingin or parang great writers talaga yung mga nakakagawa ng biography of people, famous people, especially those who have already passed away. So ano, parang tapos yung gumawa like a young person, younger than the person with that biography. So paano niya napuput into parang real life talaga yung kanyang biography? Hindi nga niya nakilala personally yon. So there must be an extensive research like interview certain person, certain people, and extensive research on the life of that person that the writer of that biography is able to put it all into a story or into a biography with credibility and factual, tapos non-fiction, no? Or creative pa. Okay? Next. Did he or she gather information from books, magazines, and newspapers? Uh, Hindi naman porket extensive research, hindi na pwedeng gamitin these resources, books, magazines, and newspapers. We have to remember that these, especially newspapers, are journalistic write-ups, journalistic articles. And they really have their information coming from reputable resources. No? So in terms of fact and in terms of truthful information, talagang pangangatawanan yan ng newspapers, magazines, no? Especially, of course, books din. Because it undergoes a lot of or tedious editing and checking. Yeah. Next would be reportage or reporting. So if did the writer accurately document the events or personal experiences? So if the form and content is more of reporting, so you have to see if the writer had accurately documented the personal experience, the events, the information. Ayan. So syempre may kasamang justification and evidences yan. Footage, malamang. They would refer to like a video that was already broadcasted. Yeah. Next would be personal experience or opinion. Okay. Did the writer include personal experiences, feelings, thoughts, and opinions in the work or in the nonfiction article? Pwede pala yun, Tutor Jamie. Pwede naman. Kasi remember that a personal experience is something that you have experienced. And therefore, it's true um, as far as that person is concerned. No? If I have my personal experience, ako nakaranas nun, I can really tell that it's true. Kasi sa akin, ako nakaranas nun eh. Yun. Ba? And the opinion, remember that opinions are actually comes from personal experiences, personal orientation. If we have different opinions because we have different orientations. Ayan, may iba-iba tayong background sa buhay. Ayan. Explanation and exposition as a form and content, you have to look for this one, the exposition of the writer, and ask the question, did the writer thoroughly narrate his or her personal experience or topic to the reader? Na-explain ba ng mabuti? Was it was it exposed, especially the events that the writer would want to expose? Kasi personal experience, kung gusto niyang expose what had happened in his or her life, then that's her call. And then the format. Does the writing have a well-constructed introduction, body, and conclusion? No, I always remember essays on this one. But of course, there are different formats that we would want. If it's biography, then it would be like a narration. There would be something like a plot, 'di ba, ng buhay. Ayun. If it's a memoir or it's a personal essay, there should be like an introduction, body, and your conclusion. Now we go to answering either if the statement is true or false. This is actually just a continuation of the activity one that we had last time. So please just comment if it's true or if it's false. A writer may include personal experiences, feelings, thoughts, and opinions on his or her work. Is this true or is this false? Actually, this is kababanggit lang natin kanina, especially if the art is or the work is more of like opinions, no, and like personal essays. Then yes, it's true. A writer can include personal experiences, feelings, and artworks. Ayan. Next, in critiquing a piece of work, fast checking must always be done. Fact checking, I'm sorry. Critiquing a piece of work, fact checking must always be done. Okay, let's remember the must always, especially when we are talking about non-fiction. Kasi that the facts would carry the credibility of our work. So it's true. Well, some of you may say na paano if it's a personal essay, no? As a critic kasi you have to uh really like to ask that person if it really happened to him or her, 'di ba? Parang pwede pa magpakwento. So it's also like checking if the facts are correct. Next, a critic must be written subjectively based on observations of the text. Ay, sorry, napindot ko na. Actually, it's false kasi a critic, we always tell that the conclusions of a critic has to be objective based on standards and approaches that are yung pinag-aralan natin dito sa ETUlay. Ayan. Next, a critic must check if the writer makes use of literary devices that gives his or her work a style. Is this true or false? This is actually true. Kasi we are on creative nonfiction. Creative nonfiction always is writing or narrating nonfiction or actual facts or events in a story style. Or syempre, kung story style, narrative style, we have to use the styles that are used in fiction stories. Pero ang kaibahan sa nonfiction, almost everything is true or everything is true. Ayan. Okay. Next. Coherence means that the entire paragraph should focus on one single idea. This is true. This is true. So, nabanggit natin kanina that coherence would actually warrant you to have your paragraph focused on a single idea and has a smooth flow of ideas. Okay. This is a critique on a classmate's work. If you would want to, if it's an activity that is found on the module of that I got from SDO Caloocan. So you have to find a partner and carefully read and analyze his or her essay, and then write a mini critique about his or her output. Your mini critique should contain the following essential parts. In the introduction, introduce the work you are critiquing by giving a brief background about the essay and end it with a thesis statement or a sentence summarizing your evaluation of the essay as positive, negative, or mixed. Okay? In the body, with a comprehensive and constructive assessment of the work you are critiquing, your critique should not be focused to the negative opinions only. Thus, it should address both the strength and the weaknesses of the writer. And in the conclusion part, write a concise paragraph indicating your overall assessment of his or her essay and the reasons for your judgment. You may also suggest recommendations for the improvement of the essay. The rubric below, which means on the next slide, will be used in assessing your mini critique. Ito po yung rubric. Ayan. So here are the standards that you would like to check. No? So, ang gigradean dito ay yung critique na ginawa on a classmate's work. Yan. So next week, we will be writing a draft of creative nonfiction piece based on the learner's memorable real-life experience. That's week 3 of quarter 4. As I end, let me read this quotation to you by Ralph Waldo Emerson, an American essayist. Let me never fall into the vulgar mistake of dreaming that I am persecuted whenever I am contradicted. And with that, see you next week for another ETUlay online session. Stay safe and God bless.
Sigurado ako na marami ka na namang natutuhan sa ating ETUlay tutorial session ngayong araw. Tandaan, ito ay hindi lamang para sa ating mga mag-aaral, kundi pati rin sa ating mga minamahal na guro at mga magulang na kaagapay natin para maituloy ang pagkatuto sa kabila ng nararanasang pandemya. Patuloy ding sumubaybay sa DepEd TV para sa mga araling ginawang video episodes. Mapapanood ito mula Lunes hanggang Sabado, alas 7 ng umaga hanggang alas 7 ng gabi sa inyong mga telebisyon. Abangan bukas mula 1:00 ng tanghali ang iba pang aralin sa ating ETUlay free online tutorial session sa Filipino. I-like and subscribe at manatiling nakasubaybay sa ating ETUlay tutorial session sa DepEd Edtech Unit FB page at Educational Technology Unit channel sa YouTube at sa DepEd Tayo at DepEd Philippines social media accounts. Paalam!